Hey guys, welcome to the Bunch of Short Guys monthly meeting. I guess technically we're in November, but it's also technically the October one. It's just fun 2020 stuff as always. Glad everyone could be here to make it for the Cameron Witt
guys,
welcome
interview.
to the Bunch of Short Guys.
We got Abby here as our co-host.
Off toward the end at the top. Thank you for everyone for joining us. I'm going to share my screen to go through a few little notes we have, guys. So just as a FYI, this is a Bunch of Short Guys group where we talk about art. And, no matter how much craziness is in the world, we just talk about art and we try to, stay focused on creatives and getting everyone's voices out there. Just to give you a little past history, we've been doing monthly meetings in YouTube for basically since May. And before then, we were doing live events at different places around Dallas and little social gatherings, parties, studio events. And every year we come together for a big convention that, 2020's kind of put a halter on some of this, but hopefully we will be able to get back to some of this very soon. Hopefully in 2021, we'll have something like this. If not, we'll just keep on doing the virtual thing and getting everyone's voices heard, where we will have more portfolio reviews coming up. One of the things we are still building up to is an industry giants, and that's what leads us into Cameron's talk today. Cameron was the artist behind our next industry giants convention. He was the artist we picked to basically come up with this amazing poster art for us to announce to the world that, yes, we are still going to have industry giants. We're still working toward that. And this is an amazing work that he had done for us. Most of our talk today will be about that. Sorry, one sec, I switched my screens right before we started. I do want to also mention, guys, if you guys have any questions, suggestions, or you wanted your art just to be seen, we have over, I think we have over 3,000, or no, we have 1,400 members, sorry, in the Short Guys group. I think we have another 1,400 members in our actual official webpage. But we have professional artist students, people, looking to mentor and get menteed on here. So feel free to post up your work and show us what you're working on anytime, okay? Or if you got any questions, let us know. We also got our Bunch of Short Guys website where you can get a bunch of news about us. Or if you want to see it on our past meetings, just go to our YouTube at a Bunch of Short Guys YouTube. With that being said, I do want to just introduce everyone. If y'all can just say hi, Cameron. You can just say hi to the group.
How's it going, everyone? Hope you're having a good Saturday.
Thanks for doing this for us today. So Cameron, like I said, we asked him about a year ago if he could start working on the artwork for a Bunch of Short Guys industry giants, and he agreed to that. And then we started looking through his portfolio. We saw he has an amazing plethora of work that we just basically wanted to set this talk up and get to know about him. So with that, Cameron, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. Whenever I was growing up, always wanted to do art, always wanted to be paid to make drawings and paintings. And so when I started getting into video games, I realized that kind of my two passions just combined naturally there, because I love playing games, love computers, and I loved making art, and I wanted to go into that professionally. And so I remember seeing like the concept art for Destiny, and just Jamie Jones's paintings for that game just blew me away. And so over several years, I went to different schools, like university settings, but I finally found a school that really clicked for me, which was just a trade school in Cedar Park called Gemini School of Visual Arts. And there I worked under several actually really big time concept artists, as well as 3D artists, as well as having a classical foundational training in painting with acrylics and oils and drawing with charcoal and pencil. And that upbringing, just kind of artistically, was very kind of retro, very old school illustration, almost European model, the atelier model of kind of going through and learning to draw and paint for 2 years traditionally, and then spending 2 years doing digital and 3D. And from that, I just got a really good foundation that I'd been missing when I was going through the university system, trying to learn basically the model that they weren't teaching, which was representational figurative art. And after school, I was fortunate to go work at Picture Plane. And Picture Plane makes key art, which is basically promotional advertising art. It's the big consumer-facing images, like on the poster or on the box art for a video game or a movie. And that was a really fun experience. Got to work on some really interesting projects. We did some pitch work for one of the Elder Scrolls games. We did the actual box design for Deathloops, which is coming out, I think, late 2021. Did some stuff for Ghost Recon, for XCOM, just a lot of fun projects for really cool games that I played myself. And after that, I ended up being laid off because that's the nature of the industry. And anytime that they got to make cuts, the newest guys are I start looking at those guys first. So I found myself in a position where I was freelancing, and I really love the lifestyle and the kind of workflow, just the way that you manage yourself, be your own boss. And it's been fun, and it kind of happened at, I guess, the right time with the way that's sort of where everything is going now, working from home. So freelance has been great, but it's very different than working in a studio. So I've just really kind of enjoyed learning the different perspectives and outlooks on work and culture, just doing both of those. And I think for now, I really like doing freelance, and I've gotten to work for some architecture companies who have been pitching some really futuristic projects. So I've got to do some Sid Mead kind of science fiction style paintings. And recently I did some work for a video game, sci-fi video game being made right now. And so that's my bread and butter, just getting to do kind of fantastical science fiction, futurism stuff. But that brings us up to the present, and things are going strong, and I'm really loving it.
That's great, man. Yeah, like I said, I really appreciate you coming and showing off your work. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let you do some breakdowns for us of some of your past work.
Sure. All right, let me go ahead and get this set up on my end really quick.
And yeah, I totally forgot that you had been working on that Deathloop game. I'm really excited to work on that or play on that.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how that turns out and what it looks like in the end.
Do you by chance know the release date on that?
I do not. I think it's in early development, so it's probably going to be a little while.
Okay.
But I will keep y'all posted with any details, because I'm excited to see where it goes myself. So
yeah, I'd be really.
If I learn anything, I'll pass it along.
Yeah, I'll definitely share it on the Short Guys website.
Cool. Yeah, I got to do a lot of work for them. And they're pretty much like, hey, we have no idea what this thing is going to look like. We're just going to push that all to you, and you can feel that and figure all that out. So it was cool, kind of getting to art direct a little bit at the same time as just figuring out what things were going to be kind of from the ground up. But can you guys see this right now? The Photoshop stuff.
I will say one thing real fast. Guys, if you got questions, again, either use the YouTube chat, or if you're in the Zoom call, you can use the Zoom chat. We'll be taking little breaks for some questions, but we'll definitely do a big Q&A toward the end of the talk. Okay?
Cool. All right. Well, thank you very much for the introduction. All right. So I have a little bit of a lesson, or just, yeah, okay, we'll call it a lesson. I have just a little thing I want to touch on that I use throughout this process of arriving at this poster design here. So, and this is something that I wanted to mention to y'all. I actually think there's a lot of value right now, especially in doing mentorships. If you know an artist that you respect, that you really want to work with, or that you would like to learn from, if you can find out if they're doing mentorships, like, that is such an enormous advantage of living in 2020 or 2018. The current day, we have that huge advantage of being connected all the time through the internet, through Zoom, through Google Hangouts, whatever. And so there's an artist that actually, I'm going to share some of his work really quickly. There's an artist that I am a big fan of, named Devin Corwin. And hang on really quick.
It's all good.
Devin's art just really fast. And I sought Devin out, and he was doing mentorships. And I went ahead and decided, when I got the offer to do the poster, I decided I wanted to work with Devin through a mentorship and learn from him. And I wanted that to kind of color the process of designing this poster and have a big impact on it. And Devin is a very classical kind of figurative painter, but he is like really old school and very direct approach. That's very much like oil painting or traditional drawing, and he does a lot of that stuff. But something I loved about his work that I wanted to do was just how simple it is and how descriptive it is at the same time. And so that's why I sought him out, because I thought he had really good graphic design skills. I thought he had an interesting way of painting and looking at things and compressing information. And that was just something that resonated with me. And I wanted to see if I could learn that from him and take it into future work. And I had a great opportunity with the poster design to be able to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to Photoshop really quick. The point of that is just to say, if you have an artist that you would like to learn from them one-on-one, just, I would recommend asking them and seeing if that's something they do. Right now, a lot of people especially are doing extra things on the side to make a little bit more money. So that has been enormously helpful for me. It's great doing Learn Square and YouTube tutorials, but doing this experience with another pair of eyes helped me very uniquely to learn kind of about my blind spots and what I was doing that I could be doing better. So anyway, I have a few thumbnails here just from the start of this process, and I did a lot more, but these are just a few that I didn't end up going with. But these are some ideas that I thought might work well as poster designs, specifically just because you can kind of like have some text or something in this space, or in here, like whatever, I don't know. But the idea is that I'm trying to find a layout that kind of lends itself to just sort of getting the information out there, like height specifically, and have a little bit of kind of a block down here where I can simplify some, and then kind of a dominant block up here, and same kind of thing down here. And I was just experimenting with things, just kind of get something cool going. That would be a nice backdrop, and that I could kind of put some information on, and that kind of thing. Like keep some gaps, and also do a horizontal and a vertical crop, because that's whenever I was a picture planner, the big part of the key art that we did was you can move stuff around, but you should be doing the entire image, understanding that there's going to be different props and that they should accommodate kind of a unique aspect ratio while still being able to present all the information you need. So these were 3 other thumbnails that I did, and I actually put some type on top of them. But these were the 3 that I liked well enough to take to the next stage. And that's where I'm going to switch over really quick and talk a little bit about the idea or the concept of focusing on things in your work. Because when I was a student, what I struggled with a lot was sort of a feedback loop between focus and having confidence. And what I mean by that is you'll do a bunch of thumbnail designs, you'll have a bunch of ideas, and you have to pick one. Like you have to pick a central idea or a theme or a composition or a color. Every time that you decide, you know, you're going to do something a certain way, you have to make a decision. You have to pick something. And with concept art, you can always edit things. There's always iterations, but especially with an illustration like this, you're moving towards a final image, and you want it to be the best design it can be. You want it to be the best overall impact that it can be, and you have to be making decisions the whole time and focusing on the idea that you want to convey. And because you're going to be eliminating the other ideas you had that you're not pursuing, you have to have confidence in your key ideas that you're moving forward with. And whenever you start out, I think it's a lot of times tricky to really zero in on and focus on your ideas, because some of them are very unproven because you don't have the mileage or the experience. And even experienced artists, I think indecision is something that eats into your time and that causes you to spin your wheels more than anything. But as you do more paintings, as you start and finish more paintings, you get more of an intuition about where you want to focus your attention, your efforts, and how you want to focus your attention, your efforts to tell the story that you want to tell. But through doing that and just getting those miles in and getting that experience, I think that process solidifies more. So as you move forward, you know, you have basically you're constantly cutting yourself or funneling yourself more in the direction that you want to go. And it's almost like a rule of thirds thing where it constantly is overlapping and sort of informing where you're going to go next. So, you know, rule of thirds is just, and this is a really crude example, but rule of thirds is this idea that you've kind of got 70% here. There you go. That's a very beautiful little box. That's 70%. And then you've got 30% here. And the idea is that you kind of break up your shapes and your design just to be less balanced and less kind of predictable and just more organic and more interesting. And, you know, that's the Fibonacci sequence, is that eventually it just continues going indefinitely, and you keep cutting that down and you keep cutting that down, and it just goes on forever until, you know, you just have this one little space of light here, and that just goes on infinitely with the rule of thirds Fibonacci sequence thing. But by that same token, whenever you are working and you're kind of narrowing your options and making choices, you continue to sort of say, you know, okay, so this small area is the one that I'm focusing on. This stuff, all these options I have, because I could paint anything, I could do anything, I could have any composition, but for the story I want to tell, this thing I've chosen suits it best. And so you're cutting yourself off from that, and then you do it again, and you're constantly just removing more chaff and just keeping the wheat. And by the end of it, you had all these options you could have done, but this is the actual intentional design that you've made. And so it's just narrowing down kind of your net and zeroing in on the thing that matters, that you want to say, that's going to help that design communicate your ideas clearly. So that's all good and fine, and it probably seems pretty obvious, but the flip side of focus and confidence is option paralysis and decision fatigue. And what those are is option paralysis is pretty much what it sounds like, where you have all these options. You can do anything you want. You can do a car in a Sydney environment. You can do some robots duking it out on Mars. You can do this nice little Spark cottage scene. And it's so overwhelming. A lot of people call it kind of like the blank canvas. You know, it's very intimidating to have this big white canvas, and you can do anything you want. And it always causes you to seize up and kind of clam up and not know what it is that you want to do. And so that is a thing that plants a lot of kind of doubt once you start working. You think like, oh, is this, I'm trying to make an awesome piece of key art or an awesome poster. Is this really going in the best direction? Because you can do anything. And so as you go in and feel intimidated by that, you're going to have decision fatigue, because as you continue having to make those choices and kind of siphon down those possibilities in that net, you're sacrificing all the other thumbnails, all the other avenues, all the other ways you could go as you get closer to what you're actually going to have as the final image. And so if you don't have strong confidence, you don't have a lot of purpose in what it is that you're doing, what's informing the decisions you're making, as you make choices, you'll continue to actually get physically tired. It'll become more exhausting. And it's when I was starting out, like even just working on a painting, even if it went well for a while, I would feel like, oh, okay, that's enough for now. Like I would want to step back. I would just feel like, okay, I'm at a good stopping point because some good things happened. I sort of want to just go get a drink or separate myself from a little while, which that's not what you want. You want, when you get those choices that start adding up and things start clicking and the painting starts coming together, you want that momentum to carry you forward. And as you do more painting, it will. When you're still kind of getting your legs about things, it is more exhausting and it just takes more time. But ultimately, I just want to communicate that it's completely natural to scrutinize and look at your thumbnails and your designs and your sketches and say, I don't know if I have confidence in this one. And that's a very healthy part of the process. And that's why this stage is so important, is because as you do make these choices and do these things and decide what you want to focus on, it becomes more intuitive and it becomes more energizing. And as you do that, you start to build your voice as an artist, just as a storyteller. Because when I was looking at this, I was looking at the Sid Mead style one, and I got some color reference and some treatment reference. And Sid Mead had passed away recently whenever I was offered this poster design. And so one of the ideas was a tribute to Sid Mead. And so that's a pretty clear focus. And as for, the actual composition, I just wanted sort of a cool Sid Mead car, some characters, like getting out, maybe, dressed nicely like they're out for a night on the town, and then this really cool, big, bustling cityscape. And these are very graphic, very simple thumbnails. And it's important that you work this way at the beginning, just because as you make these choices, you're going to make some bad choices and some good ones. And you don't want to spend a lot of time with choices that don't pan out. And so I got this one, which I liked, but I was obviously exploring other options. And I did this kind of mech warrior inspired thing just because I think robots are really cool. And I was looking for something cool and something that would be tense and kind of be an action scene. And so I explored some of that, and just focusing on lighting and graphic shapes, a lot of shape design, and just doing a lot of kind of 70-30 relationship stuff about having some big shapes, some small shapes, and some medium-sized shapes. And then lastly, I just kind of thought maybe something a little bit mellow. It was obviously kind of a stress-inducing time. So just sort of a little bit of kind of Sparky inspired landscape, beautiful hills, and a little refinery out there in this big forested area. And I presented these to the group of a bunch of short guys, and this one really resonated with them, and I thought it was really cool. I was happy with it, and I decided that I wanted to move forward with that. And immediately, the elements that I liked about this that I wanted to focus on was sort of this idea of these two big, bulking, like behemoth robots, kind of coming together and facing down one another, not really knowing exactly what was going to happen. Like, they're not in the middle of like firing off a bunch of missiles or anything, but sort of like two giant, like big animals at a watering hole that might kind of get into a confrontation with one another. And as that idea kind of took off, it started to inform sort of the way I was thinking of it, and I approached it kind of like a Western. There was a piece of art from Once Upon a Time in the West, actually, that sort of was the basis. Hang on, I'm going to bring this up really quick. And it was sort of the basis of the overall composition. Here we go. And this is here it is right here. So I'm gonna stop sharing this, and I'm gonna share this screen right here. So this poster right here, if y'all can see this, was sort of just this character down here, kind of smaller and back in the distance, and then these characters up here, kind of the antagonizers, and just this tension with them. And then here you can pretty much see he's fanning the hammer on this revolver. But I thought that was just a really cool, awesome cinematic camera angle to really heighten the tension. And so I'll get back to Photoshop. So I went ahead and brought that in here just to go ahead and sort of bring that cinematic tension that I wanted. And here that is right there. I'll just put it right next to it. And this guy is the smaller one, and this dude. And eventually, initially, I had a few over here, so I kind of flipped the script. I had the one here and then the three over here. But just compositionally, it worked better to have one. But anyway, in this stage, I've moved from kind of these very just big graphic shapes. I've moved into trying to kind of design some of what this robot is going to look like, which I did in another project that I worked on around the same time, which I'll actually bring that up really quick, just the designs of the robots. And that is...
Hey Cameron,
yeah.
By chance, do you have a window open or maybe a door to your room open? Can you close that if possible?
No, it's actually really, there's a fan on, but it's on very gently.
Okay.
Is there some kind of thing y'all are hearing?
There's some crosstalk, but yeah, I don't know if it's anything we can do. It's all good. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. But these are kind of some designs that I did, and I also did these whenever I was doing my mentorship. And this was just sort of figuring out like what these robots are going to look like. And I was using a lot of Blender, which I still do. I'm a huge advocate for Blender. But these were just some rough mech designs that I did just through randomized transform in Blender, which means you can just get a bunch of shapes and make one of these, like make this thing right here, and then you can very subtly tweak it and let Blender run through a whole bunch of different little variations. So I did that with guns, I did that with robots, and then I just like tweaked them myself and sort of figured out just some cool designs. And I ended up going with this guy for the dude in the background and this guy for the one in the foreground. And these have been modified, but these were the ideas that I was rolling with. And so let's get back to Photoshop. Here we go. And so anyway, you can kind of see those, like this dude being the Doughboy design that I had. And then I just started painting some of this in. And over here, you can see the graphic shapes they all hold, they're all the same, which is a good thing to get set up really, really quickly, because like these buildings, having them kind of at an angle, like maybe there's an earthquake or just, they've been ravaged by time and plagues, whatever, just this dystopian future where God knows what has happened. They've become completely unset in their foundation. And I thought that was a cool look. And it's something that you can immediately get just with a flat brush and black and white over here. And obviously this is simple stuff, but it is extremely useful to just keep that always at the forefront of your mind. You're trying to just get as much out of as few marks as you can. So just for, conveying space, just look at the scale of kind of these shadows, and just sort of as the landscape widens and goes out, you get a higher frequency of information. And then as it comes out, you're seeing things that the scale is changing, and so you're getting more space in between these elements. And always looking for little ways to push that sense of scale and that sense of space, especially at the start, is just hugely beneficial later on down the line. And so then we got here, and I had this big structure. I didn't know exactly what this was, but just kind of a big overhang, which for whatever reason, I kind of liked it compositionally over here. We get that negative space kind of popping out, that kind of change and counter change between the black and the white. But as I kept moving with it, I decided that it was kind of claustrophobic, and it was sort of not doing what I wanted for the image. And so I went ahead and just removed it entirely, brought these buildings up a little bit, and brought this water throughout this scene that just kind of divides these characters and just sort of heightens the tension, as well as just provides a good compositional element. And at this point, I have a nice space down here. And that's something else I should mention, is that I'm always in the context of this piece because it is a poster and to have information that I'm going to have to relay to people. I'm just thinking about kind of my spaces, gaps where I can make a poster. So here, like I'm actually thinking of doing props, you know, like this. Like here's some information, here's some information, and then if I widen that out a little bit here and shift these elements, I can go ahead and figure out what I'm going to do exactly. But if I need to do a banner design, I can then do something like this and have kind of a simple spot that I can simplify some of these buildings, but have some room here, and that kind of thing. And so that's just something I'm always thinking about, and it's influencing my decision making. So I do simplify a lot of this stuff from where it was over here. I get all this kind of junk out of there. And this is a lot of simplification, is just it helps with the painting and the clarity of the painting. But because there's going to be information over it, it's actually going to help one another, because simplifying is good for painting, and it's also really good for making text stand out. So those things just kind of continue to nail down elements in the painting. And between these two stages, this is where I learned a lot from my mentorship, because as I'm doing those things and figuring out, you know, where I want those things to be, Devin was telling me a lot about how to paint natural light or how to paint sunlight. And so, for instance, over here, these two colors, the gap between where the light is hitting that color and then where it's in shadow, just understanding better how that stuff works and what those changes look like. If you want to be a really convincing environment painter, that's an enormous thing. What you want is sunlight, for instance, is just like a really quick thing. Sunlight will bleach out colors and it will generally cool them down. Just because the way sunlight works is it's white light, and the wavelength that it works on is that it actually cools down and desaturates color. So not only where you get, you know, you go from shadow, which is very saturated, to light, which is going to be more desaturated, not always entirely. In some of these areas I just pumped it up, but here especially, like between these two, so it's going to go up in value and in saturation, that it's going to desaturate quite a lot. And also, if you look over here, you can see right here, this little guy, you can see that in the darkness, it's down closer to red and orange. And then as you go cooler, it goes up towards yellow and green, which is just cooling down. So at the same time that value is going up, the color is also becoming slightly desaturated, and also the temperature of the color is actually getting cooler. And that's not a steadfast rule that you have to adhere to. You can absolutely break that just to get kind of more vibrant colors. But here especially, going from here to this little section that's actually really, it's just a flattened kind of beveled edge there. It's like a dent, and so it's actually pointing directly up towards the sun, as opposed to this, which is kind of pointing out. That absolutely, that's going to be more saturated. And then over here, that's going to get cooler and less saturated. But anyway, that's just something that is really hammered in by what we talked about, that you'll find all kinds of things that you'll learn just about how to paint the way you want to paint, working with other people and working with tutorials. But as I start to tighten that down and make those choices, because up to now it's all been compositional choices and choices to set the stage. And then as you get to this stage, you're moving into an entirely different range of choices about how to get into materials and how to actually treat, like, okay, so this is chipped paint, this is sand, this is like glass, this is water. And just the way that you treat different materials is really going to take your paintings to the next level, because it's going to make them feel like they're not just all like Photoshoppy flat brush paint, but that they are materials that exist in the natural world. And so at this stage, the design choice making is done, but the decision making on a painting and a more artistic level really begins where you're getting into the nitty gritty and starting to render and starting to actually work out how this lighting situation and these colors are going to behave along with one another. And then from there, it's pretty simple. I went ahead and added in some distress marks, go ahead and really vibe off the idea of like a book cover. And that was always the plan, was to do something kind of in the style of almost like Fallout, something Flash Gordon kind of future, stories from after the end times kind of thing. And it's just a process of kind of finding all the little tidbits that you can squeezing the juice out of to make the painting gel better. Which, for instance, in here in this foreground, just grabbing a little bit of that lighter pink, which I think this happened because I had some transparency going on and I used the mixer brush. But grabbing just some of that warm kind of pink or red from that robot, and then just mixing that into the focal point or the foreground, not the focal point, the foreground. That's actually one of my favorite elements of the painting. Is just that it ties that together. Because if you just have this bright color and then that's not repeated anywhere else, it just sort of, it does absolutely stand out as a focal point, but it doesn't ground it quite as much. So it's just little things, like little choices that as you get more mileage and as you build up your intuition, making little decisions like that to do those sorts of things really enhances the depth and just sort of the world building in your painting, whether or not it's a one and done illustration or it's a series of images for some concept art. But the process of all this from start to finish definitely hinges, like I was saying, just on that decision making. And in repeating that and going through that multiple times, you will build up an intuition and a voice of how you want to do that moving forward as an artist. And that'll affect your entire portfolio. That won't only affect, one piece that you're working on. If you happen to be thinking about that while you're working, that'll affect everything you do. And once you have a bigger body of work built up, and that body of work is more present and more contemporary, it's going to gel, and it's going to absolutely voice to employers and to other artists and anyone that hits your portfolio that you do have a tight line of decision making that you go through, and that you're ultimately following through that process, which is reliable, which is consistent, and arrives at the best design for you. And that'll help you tell stories. That'll help you just make aesthetically pleasing compositions without context, and it'll help you form the body of work with the voice and the intent that you want people to see when they look at your work.
At what point were you like really setting your goal for this image, like this, and even like the story that you were trying to go for?
Yeah.
Were you changing that every 5 minutes, or were you from the get-go?
No, yeah, that's something that right here at the beginning, I didn't quite have the exact idea. Like I wanted to kind of vibe off sort of a Western kind of composition and narrative quite yet, but I had these two elements that just had a lot of tension with one another, and that were facing one another down. Kind of this sort of aggressive interaction between these two giant, war machines. And I just thought that was really cool. And I liked that tension and that aggression and just that overall composition. And so that narrative was already set as, and I remember thinking about it. There's a lot of dinosaur paintings from just historical illustration that have like a T-Rex like sitting on a Stegosaurus, because those things have a lot of armor, and they have spikes on these massive, enormously strong tails. And so even though, you think the T-Rex is going to win, he has to size that thing up and circle around it very cautiously. And a lot of historical illustration of dinosaurs and stuff that I'd seen growing up just really well illustrated that tension. Like one of these guys is clearly the one to be more conventionally reckoned with. Like one of these, like the T-Rex, is the more serious of the two here, but you never know what's going to happen. There is absolutely a lot of tension there, and I wanted to capitalize on that. And then, as I started to flesh things out, I just thought kind of some of the elements here, specifically in my mind, almost this black spot right here, just this shape right here. I'll just go ahead. This just shape almost felt like a cape to me, and I really like kind of the gesture of this thing. And I think it just kind of took on sort of like this sand and, you know, sort of these wires and this just, not wires necessarily, but everything kind of being fallen apart and kind of ramshackle. It made me think of like a town that was in a drought, you know, that everyone had left, everyone had moved out, except for the people that, you know, maybe owned the bar. They had businesses there, they couldn't leave. And so these characters became sort of these drifters in the scene, and that kind of informed the Western thing. And so from the second iteration of the black and white graphic thumbnail, I was completely sold on that idea. And moving forward, I just did everything I could to inform the narrative with sort of this environment without becoming too invasive. With this environment, it's just kind of dry, arid region with this little spot of water going through it. That these two guys were both there around this little stream, and they were both like this was their world, and they were going to face off here. And that was just kind of what I moved forward with from that point. But from a very early spot, I knew ultimately the main idea, and then sort of the Western thing was just flavor that I think I kind of added to that. But you want to absolutely have your narrative, your story from the get-go. Because as a student, I did change my story a lot of the time, and that is how you just work infinitely on a painting, changing things. Because as you change the narrative, you're not going to think much of it, but you're going to change just an object or a character or something. It's actually going to change the graphic like design, the overall aesthetic design. You're going to move things around to better tell the story, and all of a sudden, now maybe there's more of a story, but your graphic design has been really fundamentally flawed. And so then you redesign the graphic design. And then the next day you look at it and you think, yeah, that story actually isn't that strong. I thought it was really cool at the time, but it's not as good as I thought. And so I sank 2 days into reworking it. And now I think I'm just going to do it all over again. And that's not where you want to be. And everyone who's like done big narrative paintings has done that like 100 times. But as soon as you can, from the earliest stage, you know, figure out what you want to do, and just everything else should be in service of that. And I know that was a really long answer. For future questions, I'll keep it much shorter. I apologize. I'm kind of learning on my feet.
You're good, completely. I love the mental work that you put into this, and just kind of the thought process that you're showing us here. Is this what you trained in when you were doing your mentorship?
Yeah, with the mentorship, unfortunately, I don't have all the paintings I did, but what we actually did together, a lot of them are on an iPad, and I hadn't switched them over. But I did a lot of black and white, just black and white graphic studies, and Devin was really big. Devin was actually, I think he was a graphic designer, like in like doing a lot of product packaging design and things of that nature. And then, you used to be able to see this on his personal website. He had some of those like actual product packaging that he had designed out, which we did some of that at Picture Point too. But he was a graphic designer first and foremost, and he loved painting. This is what I understand. And he really dedicated himself to learning as a painter, and went and studied at the Florence Atelier. And he has some personal gripes to sort of the more academic teachings, and so he decided he was going to like rebuild a lot of that from the ground up, with also an eye for digital art and like concept art perspective. And on his Gumroad, which you can check out his hang on, if you Google Devin Corwin Gumroad, you can see he has 2 books, 2 PDFs about kind of his ultimate lessons on painting. Both of those, pick them up. Like, they are incredible. They are so concise, so condensed, so much just amazing information in those 2 PDFs. But with him, what I really learned was just about taking a very graphic design approach and a very basic approach, and not getting into the details too early, which is again something you hear a lot. But having kind of someone guide you through that, and you kind of witness yourself how that works through a back and forth with them doing some paint over stuff, you doing the new design, them critiquing that, and just having that one-on-one relationship gives like kind of a story and a personal experience to that lesson that if you just read something, you'll get the lesson, but you might not if you're like me and you're kind of dense and you have to kind of have more personal context. That helped a lot. But just from a graphic design perspective, and then once you approach it with a graphic design perspective, you hear all the time people talk about simplifying your painting, keeping things from too detailed and just putting detail where you want the focal point to be, and simplifying everything else. And that's both for time and for just aesthetic. But if you do approach painting with a more graphic eye, simplification is really just graphic design. I mean, it really is. And so that whole workflow helped a lot with that.
When you would ask for feedback, for instance, from your mentorships or from your colleagues or anybody, because like you said, it helps to have kind of just some guidance, or especially when you're working on your own, and we're all working on our own right now.
Right.
I'm interested on kind of how you would actually wordsmith your questions and actually know that you're asking a good question that gets to a specific, or elicits a specific response or answer or direction. Because I mean, what kind of questions did you ask Devin? Like, did you just ask him, hey, here's what I'm doing, what did you think? Or really like get into things that you got stuck on?
Yeah, that's a good question actually right there. Just speaking of questions, one thing that I did that I think is just really good to do as both a learning experience and just to kind of humble yourself as a person is, if I was working on this painting or any other painting and there were weaknesses in it that I knew about, but I thought maybe if I didn't say anything, other people wouldn't pick up on, which like we all have that. You see a thing and you think, that could be better, but I'm just gonna hope no one sees it. I would immediately go to those things. Like I would say to him, hey, there's something kind of wonky going on right here that I don't know if it's just me, but it's bugging me. And he would say like, yeah, there's definitely a perspective issue there, or oh yeah, there's a big value issue there, and so just kind of letting your intuition tell you like this is a problem area, and then letting your pride keep you from sort of trying to be like, look at this cool thing I did, like I worked really hard on it. Just coming in and saying, hey, I know this is the thing that sucks, and I really want us to make it better, and I want to learn why I couldn't do it myself, so that the next time it happens, it will be better. But also about kind of tailoring questions. When I was talking with Devin and he was instructing me, there were certain things that I could tell were really important to him that he would latch on to. A word he used a lot was precise. And you've probably heard people talk in concept art about whenever you paint a thing, they might say, paint the essence of the thing. Don't worry so much about painting a tree, but paint the essence of a tree. Like, paint what a tree looks like, but you don't necessarily set out to paint a tree. And that might sound really bizarre and very ambiguous, but what it essentially means is painting a tree, there's a lot of details there that are going to take you a long time. And instead of painting that thing, be precise enough to look at a tree and say what makes it look the way it does, like what visual cues, like little occlusion shadows of bark, or like little hard like apple shadows of bark, just the branches kind of having a harmony, just the way that they move out, kind of like how much space is there between where branches branch off, just that kind of thing. And so I would sort of ask him, if I was looking at a thing that felt kind of manufactured or contrived or whatever, I might just say, how would you kind of describe this thing with more precision? When I say describe, I mean paint. And then he would say, yeah, no, this could definitely have more of that essence, or this could be more precise. And so then he would show me like that's how you would paint like a rock, or if you want a surface to look like metal or glass, here's how you can do that. And so sort of know the person that you're taking a mentorship from, know what they value. And if you're taking a mentorship with them, then you hopefully value a lot of the same things. And so if you're going to push those, then just sort of get on their level and just say, hey, this could be more precise. And they'd say, yes, it could. And they'll help you do that. And from that, you'll learn a big part of their entire philosophy, which is to be precise in the way you paint and to be able to paint different materials and different things efficiently and quickly. And so that was just something helpful, kind of to think about painting the way they do and tailor your questions just to cut right to the meat of the issue and don't make them think too much to be all like, he's using, what does he mean? And trying to get in his headspace. You kind of meet them in their headspace because they're the one that's teaching you. You want to think more like them already, which is why you're taking lessons. So,
which sounds like you could also apply that quite well to your teachers and anywhere and your clients.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
We're hiring you to do a job.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's a good way to talk about art too, because half of making the art, or half of working as an artist, is also just communicating with clients and working on that just dialogue and making sure that whatever needs to be said up front is said, so that when you go and take all the time to make the art, you guys are on the same page. So just being able to talk with people and meet them kind of in their headspace and the way that they are thinking, instead of kind of trying to meet in the middle or even have them come meet you on your terms, is definitely the way to go.
Right, because they have something to contribute too, even if they're not necessarily an artist. If they're like the expert or the content creator or something like that, it's going to be very important to make sure that we kind of are humble enough to just go to them.
And being humble, I think, is like, I know it's a very celebrated thing in art, and so it's not like a new thing to say. Being humble is very, very critical and crucial. But it's one of those bleed over things that I think you can learn as an artist that actually makes you a better person. And anytime you can find those things, that like learning to do this as an artist can actually bleed over into just things that you do every day outside of art. Those are kind of like life philosophy things that I think actually help you grow as a person and define who you are. And if you can merge who you are as an artist and your philosophy of being an artist with your philosophy of, I don't know, being a dad, or being a baseball player, or being a hobbyist and like making models or doing anything, just kind of take that into your daily life. That's just something that I think is really cool about doing something as personal as art.
Very well said.
Hey, Cameron, I wanted to ask you, earlier you mentioned you were working at Picture Plane and you've worked at a couple studios, but over the last year, you know, as a lot of people have, they've moved to either working at home or just a straight up freelance type of workflow. How has your communications changed? You know, how, especially when getting your takes, but also, you know, letting the clients know what you're working on. You know, I just kind of want to get in your headspace from a concept artist, you know, working from home versus working at the studio with somebody on, you know, scheduled meetings every few hours, you know, things like that. What's the difference?
I don't want to upset anyone at I won't name any places or anything, but honestly, I'm not going to say anything that's going to cut into anyone, but my experience of working at home and just communicating via emails and phone calls is actually that I get better feedback, and I kind of feel like I almost have a better relationship than whenever I was in a studio with a bunch of people. I don't know if that's just because you're kind of one on one, but when you're in a studio, and maybe this is a freelance thing too, but when I was in a studio, we had like a bunch of meetings that I didn't think I needed to be in on, and that didn't really have anything to do with me. And this is like personal stuff. This is my opinion. Everyone has opinions about where they work, and they're like, I want to get back to work. I'm doing this thing that's important. But there really is like everything when you're working in the studio is kind of a one size fits all solution, where you are kind of just, you're just doing the same thing as everyone else. There's a meeting. It really, you know, there's like 6 people in the office that need to be in on it. A lot of the time they just bring in the whole team, and you just sort of, you know, sit there quietly and wait. And then whenever it's time for you to get back to work and you actually need to get feedback, just because there is so much of that kind of, you know, all hands on deck thing, it's very busy and hard to actually get people to talk to you because everyone's doing so much. And I don't really know how that would change if I was just emailing someone or calling them on the phone. But being a freelancer and kind of being on the outside, I feel like I just get some more direct communication and personal communication. also probably because if they're paying you by the day or by the hour, they want to communicate with you as much as possible. And so I don't know if that's part of it, but I felt as a freelancer, like working by emailing people and calling them on the phone, just there's been almost better communication than being in a studio. And that's one studio that I've worked at, one studio, which was actually a very good experience, but every rose has its thorns. And that was one of them, was that there was just a lot of meetings that took up a lot of time. And there were offices in Texas and in California. And some of the people in California just like to talk a lot and they like to catch up on things that didn't really pertain to the work. And there were times where we'd be like staying after hours because there had just been too much kind of talking going on that had nothing to do with the project. And that's just a studio thing. That's just it. Like and you're gonna find that anywhere, and more or less. And then you're gonna be a freelancer and you're gonna email someone and they're just not gonna email you back for days at a time. And so it just depends on who you're talking with. I'm sorry if that didn't answer the question. I feel like that was all over the place.
No,
Just
perfectly good. And that's not something that's only about artists. I mean, people in just production jobs or any of the other even accounting sometimes get called into meetings.
I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not trying to complain about having to go to meetings, but I think it's just the kind of a little bit of a one side. Like you're part of the company. You're gonna do this thing. We're all doing it. Shut up, sit down. And that's okay. I didn't have a problem with that. But on some level, I do kind of like better sort of being on the outside, and they're just like, hey, look, you're the guy who's doing this thing. You're doing your own thing. You're out here. We're communicating with you. Like I'm the art director. I'm talking to you, Cameron, the concept artist. This is what I want. But it's kind of tailored for you because it has to be. Like, because you are outside the company and you're not in on all the meetings. And so when they talk to you about that stuff, it is just one-on-one. So I guess it's kind of a de facto thing. Like, it just has to be that way. But I like it, honestly. But it's been good both ways. There's things you got to contend with no matter which way you go.
So we're going to take more questions from the Zoom chat and the YouTube chat here in a second. But I do have one question that just came up that's particularly about what we're talking about right now. Sure. How are you making connections? How are you networking, especially during this time, or even as a freelancer? How are you getting out there? Because one thing like I know when I worked at a studio, I have 30 people around me. We're all kind of focused on the goal or the end job, and we're talking every day. So it's pretty easy. Or we get invited to luncheons afterwards, and I go meet that person's friend, and it's really easy in that sense to network even outside your studio. How are you networking right now?
So right now, I got really lucky after getting let go from picture plane because I had a period where I was just doing a lot of personal work and just kind of putting my nose to the grindstone for a long time and just sending out job application after job application and not really getting a lot back from it. And then eventually one of my buddies from picture plane, who we had both gotten laid off together. His name was Hector Ruiz. He's a really good, really great concept artist and art director. But he was doing some work that he had picked up freelance, and he said, hey, we're looking for another concept artist because this project is kind of ballooned. It's become bigger than they thought it would be. And we need someone to come in on it with us. And he recommended me for the job. And so I went ahead and I didn't really even have to interview for it because Hector really was my hype man and helped me to nail it down. But that was a case where, someone who I'd worked with, who I was friends with, and who, I'd obviously been in the trenches with, went ahead and vouched for me and brought me into a job. And from that point, I did a lot of work for that studio. And after that, I don't really know. I'd actually be kind of interested in an answer to that question myself, because after I did that job, I got like 3 or 4 phone calls in the space of a week. And I had been applying for months and months, like for about 4 or 5 months before that. And I just kept getting rejected. And then I did a big body of work that I hadn't shown anyone for this other studio that a friend had brought me in on, a friend and colleague had brought me in on. And suddenly I was getting a lot of emails from art directors. So I think I think that Corrigan was the studio that I had been working for, that Hector brought me in on to that job. That was a studio called Corrigan, and they're an architecture firm in Dallas and Los Angeles and even London. Or no, New York and London and Dallas. But I asked them after the work was done if they wouldn't mind, just if they thought I did a good job, could they go ahead and spread my name to anyone in that field, like because it was art biz that I'd done that stuff, and I said, well, you guys do a lot of art biz. I know you have some competitors, and you have some people that you work with, and that's kind of one and the same in a lot of cases. But if you could, just say, hey, there's this artist we worked with. We thought that he was really good. Things went really well, and if you don't mind like hyping me up a little bit, I'd really appreciate it. And obviously, if you have any jobs that you need me for, I would love to come back and do more work, because the whole thing was an enormous pleasure, and I loved getting to work with them. But I don't know if it was that they just really helped me out, and that they really went and sang my praises to some other studios. But there were a few studios from all over America that just really quickly were just sending me offers, and it was very straightforward. Like, I had a few phone calls, and they all just seemed to be sold. They didn't ask for art tests. They didn't ask for, a lot of, basically, they didn't want me to do a whole bunch of stuff and compete with it. They just said, hey, yeah, we love your work, and we think you'd be good for this project. So I'm not 100% sure, but I guess the answer I do have is network with your peers that you do talk to, people who, if you've been in the trenches with them in school or at jobs, and even if you haven't talked in a while, don't be afraid to just say, hey, how's it going? What are you up to? And if you're looking for a job or you're looking for work, then don't be afraid to just kind of come out and say, hey, man, I'm really looking for work. Have you had any good luck? Are you in a position that you can recommend me to maybe someone you've done freelance for in the past, or a studio where you're working now? Because just someone who has done good work vouching for you does a tremendous amount. And in my case, I really reap the benefits from that, because I went from having no work to having to choose between multiple jobs, and those were some actual tough decisions, because there were some cool things that I could have been working on. So if you're struggling to find work or network with people, it's hard to meet people right now, I think, is kind of what I'm saying. So any connections that you have, try and spark up some conversations, and don't feel like you have to kind of walk on eggshells around just talking about work. But if there is someone that you haven't talked to in a while, be like, hey, do you want to grab a beer? I'm looking for some work. Maybe we can talk about just what you've been up to, and we can reconnect. And just reconnect with people on the basis of reconnecting. Like, mention the work thing, but then just like hang out with them, have a beer, do whatever. And you're just kind of planting seeds in relationships and just fostering those relationships. It's like maybe a month or 2 months from now, someone will be like, hey, my buddy who I was talking with the other day would be a really good fit for this. And just sort of like be an active part of other artists' lives, so that whenever the opportunity comes, they have confidence in you, they know you as a person, and they're willing to vouch for you. I think that's a good thing. So if you don't know artists, you're here, so this is a really good place to meet people. Send me a friend request on Facebook, send me any messages or whatever. We can hang out if you're in the DFW area. But I think just building relationships with artists and art directors. The other thing is just like, send out cold call emails to art directors, just saying, hey, I know you're in the area and we do this. And that's the same old thing. And I think that is not a bad idea, but it's very conventional and very obvious, and it doesn't have a human connection. So I'd imagine the art directors are getting a lot of emails like that right now, and you're not really going to stand out. But if someone else gets their foot in the door and they can kind of like, give you a little bit of a push and vouch for you, that's impactful.
But yeah, it's not very hard right now just to, you see one of your, people that you admire, just to message them, say, I really admire your work,
Absolutely.
and maybe in 3 months when you do have something amazing to show that you want to critique on, just, to build that relationship. I think it's super easy right now because we are all connected and we're kind of all used to getting messages,
Yeah.
now.
This year round, now it's worse than ever.
Yeah, it used to be kind of weird. Like, I don't know you, but now it's like, well, this is the only avenue we have. So therefore, it's become kind of normal a little more, which I actually like because I mean, I for years have been like contacting people in LA, just even for the group of like, hey, would you like to be interviewed for the group, or down the road, would you mind critiquing my work, just telling me the pulse of the world in your neck of the woods. So, this
And
time has its pluses and minuses.
yeah,
Cameron, I know you have another segment or another thing you want to touch upon, or do you want to
yeah,
go because we talked about the critique? I just want to make sure
yeah, no, that's fine. If there are any more questions, I can
we can
pick
get
up
to the rest of the questions. I do want to get into the critique, or if you had any
Yeah.
other segments of your presentation.
As far as presentation goes,
Mhm.
I think just kind of the idea of being able to focus on what you want to say and remain steadfast in it it's kind of the bulk of what I wanted to talk about. And of course, there's caveats to that, such as up front, scrutinize your ideas. And I'm just trying to reiterate, like, yeah, being able to focus on the best ideas you have confidence in them, and through doing paintings throughout that process and doing more paintings, that's basically the gist of what I wanted to say. But I'll be happy to answer any other questions and do the paint over critique whenever you guys are. Oh, yeah. Actually, the reason for that is, well, hang on. I feel like the final poster, hang on. That was just because whenever I was grabbing my images, um, hang on. Yeah, I guess at some point. So there were some images I was pulling from. Oh yeah, it was because whenever I had this image, it had industry giants kind of written out like that. That might have been. I might should have just flipped this one. That was the only reason. Was that? Hang on. Uh-oh. Photoshop's kind of thinking for a minute. Here we go. Whenever I had this that I just screen grabbed, rather than have it all backwards because I didn't have this file. Are you guys seeing my screen or not right now? I just realized I might not be. Yeah, you are. Yeah. Okay. So I kind of just decided for the sake of consistency, and so this people would be like, "Why is the type backwards?" Yeah. It's I guess a preference thing. I kind of liked just having this guy on this side a little better. It's very much a personal preference thing that this is how the poster actually kind of ended up looking more or less. Oh, okay. Yeah, because the sun rises in the east or the west. Oh, that makes sense. That's interesting. I hadn't thought about it like that. Yeah, we should.
So I'll set this up while you get ready, Cameron. So guys, a bunch of short guys, we're a big following here with professionals all over the world. And on our Facebook is a great way to connect with everyone. Kind of like what we're saying, it's easy to, everyone's kind of online, either on our LinkedIn, on our Instagram, our Discord. You can reach out to, any number of our members and just, see what we think, see what the vibe is. And I always encourage, people getting out there and showing off their work, good, bad, work in progresses, just showing work. I hate hearing artists who have a plethora of work and then they've only got one picture on their portfolio. You know, a lot of artists, we've talked to artists like David Lesperance, he, you know, he, he hires, 20 people a month. And he's like, yeah, the biggest thing I love seeing is the progression of artwork, you know. So Omar this last week, he showed, just the work he had done over a weekend, and was looking for critiques. And, we just wanted to applaud anyone showing their artwork, kind of opening up their veins to us and being like, critique it, tear it apart, So Omar, thank you for showing this work to us and giving us, another topic. I thought, hey, we're having a concept artist who's amazing, in a week. Why don't we have you come on? Guys, if you got any other artwork you want critiqued, put it on the Facebook. Another thing that I'll talk a little bit more about this at the very end, but we are going to start up kind of a drink and draw type of night, once a month. especially during going into these slower, December holiday months. And if you weren't home before, you'll probably be home a little more over the holidays. So with that, Cameron.
All right, thank you very much. Let's see. Also, just want to mention, if anyone for any reason wants to ever just contact me out of the blue and ask for a payover, I'm really happy to do anything like that. Even like Google Hangout chat sessions where we can share our screens, I would be happy to do that also. But yeah, so Omar, whenever, yes.
If I could just ask, could you make sure that you speak up you speak up clearly whenever you're doing the critique? We are just getting a little bit of feedback, but
okay. Yeah, if ever anything is kind of off or the audio is weird, just mention, and I'll go ahead and scooch up just a little bit to try and cut down on any fuzziness, and I'll articulate clearly.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. So whenever I looked at this painting, the first thing that I picked up on was there are a lot of very samey design choices just in terms of composition. There's a guy named Alex Senechal who has a really good gumroad, and I'll actually Google you or text you a link just on Facebook. I'll send you a link on Messenger to his design gumroad. But he talks a lot about this principle of, I think he calls it sandwiching, and what it is it's whenever you have gaps and spaces in a painting that are very samey and are very measured, and it's a thing that you have to work really hard to actually remove from your painting. Like, it's a thing that we do intuitively. And so when I looked at this very lush organic scene, I started seeing just a lot of very samey kind of spaces in here. So like these two are the same. This one's just a little more. This one's about the same. So there's a bit of a progression, but it feels very manufactured when you do that. And if you are trying to actually make something that looks manufactured, like a robot or something, that can actually help. But if you're trying to make something organic, it's going to be working against you, as well as the fact that these vertical bars are kind of feeling like a little bit claustrophobic and a little bit not a peaceful kind of vibe out in the wilderness kind of thing. That I definitely think we can improve on that. But I do like just your spatial awareness, kind of the way that this image reads, kind of following through here. Then you have a little bit of a plateau right here. When you come out, there's some rocks here, and there's this nice waterfall. I do like that read a lot. I think, however, that some of this space, the stuff over here, and some of this right here, while it's fine for just basically framing that composition and that eye path, there are some things that I can definitely suggest that I think will kind of improve some issues. Really quickly, though, I'm going to share an artist with you who I think you should definitely check out, because part of the thing that Devin and I talked about a lot was, like I said, precision. And there's this artist named Douglas Henderson, and I'll text you that also. I'll send you that on Messenger. And Douglas Henderson is a prehistoric artist. He's an illustrator who does a lot of dinosaur stuff. But his trees are incredible. Like, just how much character and believability and specificity his trees have is just really nuts. And I'm going to get back out to his main page. We can go to the Triassic period really quick. But he has, actually, you know what? I came prepared. I forgot about this. He has all these really nice little details that are just so believable and grounded in his trees. And those are the sorts of things that on like a big graphic level or big picture level, you don't want to think too much about that. If you're going to boil this down to its base essentials, then this is a beam right here, this is just a line, and these are different thicknesses and all that. But once you get to the stage where you're at, and you really kind of start to put in color and material treatment, just kind of, and this one's kind of grainy, but just looking at specific reference and getting really good reference, which this guy does, like I was looking at these trees right here. These kind of remind me of the ones in your painting, and like they go straight up. Like for instance, we'll be talking about. I'm gonna get rid of these really quick.
I don't think we're seeing your cursor right now. And
Oh,
did
you're
you
not?
are you in Photoshop?
Okay, I see. Okay, so if you're not seeing my cursor, let me describe this a little bit.
There we go. We see it. We saw it for a sec.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll just go ahead and highlight this, and
Yeah.
I'll screen grab this. This will work for me.
Yeah,
So,
do that.
So right here, these trees that are right here, these kind of tall, skinny trees. Whenever I first looked at this, I thought, it would be a good idea to go ahead and make them just more kind of swoopy and organic. And then I thought that maybe you had chosen this for a reason, and you wanted some of those.
Hey, Cameron?
Yes.
You probably need to switch back to Photoshop. Did you change to the browser?
Whoops. I'm sorry. This is
Hey,
my first.
I do that all the time in class, so no worries there.
Cool. All right. So here we go. Now that you know what we're talking about. So these trees right here, these specific trees, whenever I first looked at this, I just thought, okay, these are just up and down, very, very straight vertical bars. Let's go ahead and move them around. But then I started thinking about Douglas Henderson's art. And Douglas Henderson has a lot of these, I don't know what they're called, not sequoias, I don't know what they are, but they're very distinct trees. And he paints them very precisely, and they're very cool. And I thought maybe that was what you wanted to do. And if I changed your painting, you'd go, well, that wasn't my intention. You kind of fixed something on some level, but you also did something very different than what I wanted to do. So looking at these, and hang on, I'm going to grab one. Oh yeah, I have this PSD. Looking also at these right here, I'm just seeing a lot of these little. Oops, let me get my layer all the way at the top. Something underneath the layer right now. I'm seeing kind of. Hang on.
Well, you figured that out. One thing I'm noticing, with his work is he's using his shapes very contrast like. They're clearly defined where they're at. They're not getting muddled, I guess.
Yeah, there's a good foreground, middle ground, background read for sure. And so just kind of taking that, looking at how he kind of is painting some of these trees, and also I would just get a lot of this reference. So for instance, with some of these right here, I'm just going to copy this back in. That didn't go quite there. Hang on. There we go. Okay. Looking at kind of some of these little details and just the way these kind of jut out at like almost antagonistic directions. They feel very like they're going to be there doing their thing whether or not you design it that way. Like you're obviously painting these trees for nothing for the purpose of lighting the eye, but having them be just organized but chaotic enough to where it feels like they exist in the world because weather conditions, and it doesn't matter for the sake of this picture if they're going to do what you want or not. And just sort of get these straight angular trees and start playing with them, but kind of break up some of those spatial relationships a little, and get to some of these smaller kind of tertiary details out that really, and also these are going to be jutting straight out. So like I'm not doing like these. I'm focusing more on getting these to look like sharp and spiky. Like you wouldn't want to touch these, you wouldn't want to try and find these. They're pretty oppressive. And in the case of your painting, you might make them more organic. And I'll pull back from that. But just on a macro level, I want them to feel kind of unique from the trees. The tree that is this thing right here. I want it to feel pretty unique from that. And so just to sort of help with the composition, I'm going to go ahead and just make them as distinct and as specific as I can. Maybe there's one that's falling down. It's kind of touching the water there. And I'm going to flip the canvas a lot. I flipped the time. When there was a picture thing, people really didn't like it because I would flip something and forget to flip it back and then show it to them, and they wouldn't know what they were looking at. And they would think, "Oh my God, what have you done?" And I was, "Oh, I was flipping it." And they're like, "Oh, okay." Because we all share the same files, obviously, so that freaked people out a lot. But I flip stuff all the time, like every minute sometimes. Not necessarily that often, but flip it a lot. And then as we get kind of down lower, there are going to be fewer trees that are going to actually grow this tall. There's going to be a lot more trees and little brambles that are going to be down here, and that's going to kind of provide some interesting vibration. And so that's just a thing. Look at nature photos and really try and interpret what you're seeing. And that's how you paint really specifically, and you paint really convincingly. So that's just a different framing device. I'm actually going to try and blot out some of this because I don't want there to be too many just kind of samey spaces in here. But this is the sort of thing that I kind of like that. This is the sort of thing that you'll just kind of push and pull and just kind of figure out what you want where you want it. So right there, that's a little bit, and I'm just going to go ahead and lock transparency by hitting the little / key, and then I'm going to grab. I have some good brushes here for doing environment stuff, so I'm just going to go ahead and grab a little nature brush, and I'm using sparse brush pack. I'm just going to grab one of these and turn it on to color dynamics real quickly. And I'm going to grab some of this, and a little bit brighter than that. And I'm just going to go ahead and sort of add a little bit of texture. This is really fast. This is really rough. I actually want to turn it on. There. I'm going to turn on transfer as well.
Cameron, one comment we've had in the chat was thank you for explaining your hotkeys. Yeah, what was the one you used to flip it?
Yes. Okay. So there is, as far as I know, there's actually no hotkey to flip out of the box in Photoshop. So what you can do is just edit, keyboard shortcuts.
Well, I meant just as you're giving Omar his critique, if you wouldn't mind just kind of
verbalizing
your hotkeys.
Yeah, so I set my hotkey up to F2. So if I just hit F2, it flips. And if you just Google how to set up hotkeys in Photoshop or whatever, it's really simple.
I saw one too.
It saves so much time.
Yeah. Also, here's one I am going to illustrate how to do this really quick. This is an old tried and true trick. Well, mine's actually not set up right now. If you go, so perfect. If you go to Window and go to, let's see. Oh yeah, View, not Window. If you go to View and do Proof Setup, you have these options. If you click Custom and then go to click this option right here, Proof Conditions, Device to Simulate, go to Working Gray. It's right up at the top, Working Gray dot grain 20%, and hit OK. If you hit Control Y, at any time, you can change it from grayscale to color. And do that really quick. And it doesn't actually edit the file. So if I change this to grayscale, save it, and then open it back up, it's going to open in color because I haven't changed the file. I just changed the way I'm viewing the color. So that's really handy. And in fact, with that, I'm going to come over here, and to kind of get that foreground, background back in play, I'm going to just lighten some of this. And I'm using this brush purely for aesthetic to just give it some texture. This is handy because you don't have to go on Google and get photos. And photos you're getting free precision and you're not having to work for it. So actually just kind of identifying how to use brushes, and a big thing, letting the brushes do the work for you is a big part of this. So that's about like that. That's fine, like that, okay. Also, one thing that I'm just realizing I did that I didn't know I had done before I opened this, I took the little guy in the boat and I just made a selection on the original base layer, and I hit Shift F5, and it brings up this content aware box. Where that guy was, he was right in the middle. Hang on, I think I can actually. Darn. So I actually edited that. Although I can bring it back really quickly just to show everyone. Yep, this is a little rehearsal. Never mind, forget you saw that. Anyway, I apologize for the fact that I can't get that original back, but there's there's a little guy in a boat here. The only takeaway from that is that he was right smack dab in the middle, and I wanted to go ahead and move him somewhere else, so I just took it out because it was a little bit too samey. And mentioning that, I'm also feeling there is this line, this dividing line where this tree is smack dab in the middle of the image. So I'm just going to really quickly paint that out a little bit. Do that. I'm just going to get rid of that and paint that back just a little bit. And this is really rough. This is just problem solving. This isn't trying to paint water or trying to paint trees right now. This is just problem solving to push some of this stuff back a little. So that's some of that, and I actually can list some of that down. But something I noticed looking at this, a few things, is that there's a lot of detail in areas where I don't think there needs to be. And like for this flower, for instance, let's take that color. With this flower, for instance, I'm just going to go ahead and paint over that for now. And you can bring that stuff back, but it'll be much less detailed because right now it sets out as a photo. It reads very clearly as a photo. And you can do that, but you want to wait until later in the painting. I want to paint some of this stuff out significantly. And another thing is that focus on using a lot of kind of grays in your painting. Just desaturated colors, just to sort of push the color where you use it a little more. So I'm just going to go ahead and push that back there a little bit. And I'll bring those flowers back, but I'm going to bring them back like this. I'm going to grab a little bit, I'm going to desaturate this a lot actually. I'm just going to go ahead and add some of these little things, and these are flowers right now. This is obviously rough, but these are just going to be little flowers that we have, and push those back to us still. But whenever you have like these blue things right here and this orange thing right here, and then just kind of some separate flowers based on whatever photos were available, everything is kind of less pervasive and rounded. So with these, I'll just go ahead and include them in the painting in other places. So I'm just going to do some little brush. It's going to be fine. I'm just going to go ahead and grab that blue. I'm going to turn on color dynamics. So get a little bit of vibration going, nothing more. There, that's good. And then I'm just going to go ahead and include these things in some different areas. Just kind of around, and I'm also going to turn back on transfer, because this is going to be kind of how strong these are. But I'm just going to populate a few little areas with that stuff and paint over them in some places to push them back. But kind of just add some blue. What's that?
No, what?
I apologize. I was saying I'm just going to go ahead and grab some of this blue to bring some of these plants in different places and just make them kind of more pervasive through this environment. That's a little too much, but you can kind of play with that and figure out where you want it. But now, as far as the kind of orange tree right here goes, it's kind of a focal point. I want to go ahead and give it a little bit more volume, but also where it is right now, I'm going to try and there we go. I'm pushing this back because I don't want the middle of the painting to line up right at the middle. So right now we're going to have kind of this right here, which is just a little bit kind of lines up at that middle. I'm going to push it over just a bit. So I'm going to paint some of this over that into here, and I'm going to grab this. And I'm just going to go ahead and we're going to paint the black and white too. Yeah, here we go. That's not quite right. So I'm just going to go ahead and use local color, and simplifying a lot of this stuff will help you too. So I'm just going to paint out a lot of these details, and it can be kind of hard whenever you spend time getting photos in there or painting in there, saying like, oh, I'm going to simplify it by just getting rid of a lot of information. That can be kind of hard to commit to. But if an area is just overly complex, it's just gonna make your painting better if you clear it up and if you work on getting that unnecessary information out of there. And so what I want to do is I want to go ahead and really just guide the eye towards that waterfall and have these be framing devices, because the waterfall to me is kind of the story of this painting, or this character going down this river toward this waterfall. It's a nice little pleasant focal point. And so there's some things I'm going to do, like just to kind of imply scale, like with some ripples here. And because this is going to be closer up than this, like, you know, for instance, these things happen here, they're just going to be closer than this, so they're going to get smaller. A really nice way to do that we're already kind of working with, is there these lilies that have lily pads on them. So you just wanted to make your brush white, maybe take it a little bit down from white, just so it's not, maybe go ahead and just grab something.
Hey, Cameron, this is Jay Shu really quickly. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for speaking today for Short Guys, and huge thanks to Daniel and Marshall and Abby and everybody who helped put this together. So thank you for your time. I love what you're doing here. I actually think the community could use more of what you're doing, of having like practical examples that people present and kind of saying, hey, what are some considerations and things that you could think about? Because when it's your work, I think there's kind of like this little bit of thing, well, he's the badass, you know, I can never get to his giant, awesome robots and everything. But when you see somebody like a student present work that needs critiques, you're helping them refine kind of their idea and getting it to a better place. So awesome. I think maybe we should consider actually doing some more of this kind of tutorial critiques like you're doing. So thank you for that. I've got to jump to another meeting. By any chance, are you on LinkedIn?
I am, yes.
Okay, I may reach out to you, but much appreciated for your time. Guys, great job today. Have a great Saturday and weekend.
Yeah,
You do the same, Jay.
Thanks, Jay.
Thanks for coming in, yeah.
The great Jay Shu, everyone. Hey,
Yeah.
Cameron, while we let you work, do you mind if we go ahead and get into some of the questions? Because I know we got a bunch of questions. Tatiana is on here. She was one of our artists for our demo day at the winter party. So I want to jump the ball off to her and let her ask her question.
Oh, hello. I'm loving this. This is awesome. You do really good work. I was curious. You have so many different clients that you know, there's a lot of different styles on there. I just was wondering if you had a favorite kind of client or a favorite type of style you like working on, since you do so many.
Yeah, right now I really am enjoying doing I just did a lot of kind of grounded, realistic sci-fi stuff, and I really like that because I've been getting super duper into Blender, and Blender is nice because you can just model really quickly, model very realistic, like lighting, shading, materials, and get everything looking. It won't look like a photograph or anything, and that's your job, is to make it look like a painting. But you can get a lot of information that the computer can do a lot of that work for you, and then you can focus on the graphic design and the fun stuff.
Can you speak up, Cameron? You're mumbling out.
Yeah. I'm sorry. How's this? Is that better? Cool. So I like doing kind of, I guess, sometimes I like both. I like doing kind of matte painting layout shots. I also like doing really graphic flat shapes and colors. If I had to pick one thing, I really like graphic flat shapes. I don't get to work a lot that way because most people don't want that, but I really just dig minimalism and character design. Like Richard Lyons is one of my favorite character artists.
Oh, he's so, I think he was a Short Guys presenter.
He was, yeah.
Yeah.
My question last time I was there. It was really cool. But I like doing science fiction. I like doing specifically things that kind of don't exist, or kind of more than mood paintings, which that's sort of what everyone likes doing. But really, my favorite style, or my favorite way to work, is just to be able to kind of do things from the ground up a little bit, from the blue sky stage. You don't always get to do that, but I really like kind of working from simplicity to getting details more. then just kind of one of the things whenever I was at Picture Plan that I did that I'm just noodling on this waterfall too much now. One of the things I did a lot of at Picture Plan was kind of pixel pushing and sort of just wrangling pixels around because there was this big finished image that had been approved and we were just making slight changes and that sucked. That was a thing I did not like at all. So getting to actually design is the funnest thing. And with things that don't exist, like for fantasy or science fiction, the sky's the limit. And that's been my favorite thing about working for kind of creative game clients is that you're doing something that maybe can't exist, or at least not with present technology or whatever. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Cameron, thank you. I'm sorry, does that answer your question, Tatiana?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
One thing we did want to definitely do is, as you are working on Omar's piece, I did want to see if we could give him a chance to actually just ask any specific pointed questions that he might have as you're working. Omar, is there anything you wanted to ask us, as this is your piece?
Well, for now, I'm just like really observing, like I don't know what to ask, but really just, can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I just really feel like, because I was really struggling on the three trees that I had, because I tried making branches and leaves, but it just looked so bad. So in the end, I just decided to just pick a stock free photo for the background instead, and I just went with it. But I feel like now, since I'm seeing you doing everything, it's just really helping a lot, just figuring out the things that I could have done. So thanks a lot for that. The one thing that I did want to ask you is, so like whenever I'm like browsing through ArtStation, portfolios and stuff of professionals, like I do see like, you see some portfolios, they have like fully painted, fully rendered environments. And then some people have like breakdowns as well. So like, as far as your experience is concerned, what do you think would be like a better approach when you're just starting out?
Like as far as just sort of presenting your work, as far as actually like kind of
like presenting your work on a portfolio, like the format, if that matters.
Well, something that I've seen a lot of artists do that I think looks pretty sharp is, and it depends on where your skills are, but there are a lot of guys who will do kind of a drawing before they even touch the paint, and they'll just really lay in their composition and their details with the drawing, and that there's a room for a whole like lecture on that or whatever. But what I mean by that is like, so instead of doing these just really kind of blocky, blobby tree shapes, they would, very minimalist, kind of do some of this sort of thing and get some of these trees going. And they draw a lot like this, like just very, like just straight lines kind of flowing together. And there's not too much, it's almost, to me, it's kind of hard to even think about. They're designing pretty much with lines. That makes sense. And anytime I see someone be able to kind of like provide line art along with their painting, it just looks super pro, in my opinion. And you can kind of fudge with a painting a lot and sort of arrive at a conclusion that looks good almost by luck. But if you do a drawing, and the drawing solves all the design problems, and the drawing really kind of sets your sight on what you're doing, and then you follow through and execute it with paint, presentation-wise, I think that just kind of says something, because ideally, if you're good at painting, you should pretty much, as they say, be drawing with paint. But that's not really the way a lot of people do paint. And so if you can just sort of back up your design skills just with some drafting and show that along with your painting, I just think it looks kind of old school, and it just looks like you mastered something a lot more than just like, because with a painting, you don't know really how someone arrived there. They could have used a bunch of photos and then smudged them together. With a drawing, you're more or less designing with line. And at that stage, I think it just requires a lot more mastery to kind of wrap that together and put a bow on it. And that's something that takes time. I would just say kind of be maybe thinking about that with the next thing that you start, like, how can I, and then try not to wrangle real badly. And I'm sorry if this isn't helpful, because this is something that would be more easily illustrated with a portfolio of a guy who's taken as with flying. But one of my teachers just drew in a way that was clearly, he drew as a design tool rather than to make a pretty drawing. I never registered with me people would do that until then. So if you can show an actual drawing rather than just, like, for instance, with my black and white thumbnail, it's very graphic, that's cool. A lot of people do that. If you can actually tie a drawing together, a really loose drawing, like, you know, the way I was describing, kind of some rocks, you know, have like a rock shape here. And this also actually shows, the reason I think this looks better, if you can do it right, is because it actually illustrates that you're thinking about planes. It actually kind of illustrates that you're thinking about the way that these objects are catching light before you start painting them. You're kind of doing a lot of work up front that you're going to have to do anyway, and that's something that I need to work on myself. But kind of having just sort of a plan that's set out in stone from the outset, and just showing that as well as maybe a graphic thumbnail, because those graphic thumbnails, just the black and white ones, ideally should not take you long. So if you take that and then start sort of drawing something out, and like there, where there's this rock right here, that top is going to be catching a lot of light, and then kind of this side is going to be getting maybe more light, some of this. And you don't have to like have the drawing visible in the final painting, but being able to kind of wrap that up and present that, I think this shows our problem-solving skills that we might take for granted or not even assume that someone used at all. And if you're able to understand that stuff, and then you can also show it off in your portfolio, like honestly, there are a lot of areas that could use that kind of thing. I'm just going to grab a little bit more value. And I'm just going to use, and I'm sorry, that's sort of, as far as presentation, for doing environments, I just think showing that you understand the perspective, you understand the lighting, and you kind of understand level design also is really important for that stuff. And I know, actually, now I'm rambling a little bit right now, so I'm going to try and wrangle that in. If you're doing this image, making the pretty picture and, you know, kind of like getting something that looks serene or tranquil or whatever you want to look like, that's awesome. That's in some ways the final goal. But in like a game, for instance, this is actually going to be an environment that a character is going to move around in. So if you can think about sort of where the character would be going, and actually this waterfall, for instance, it's kind of a thing. It's sort of a prop at the end of this river for your character to be moving towards. And doing that kind of thing, like having good elements to guide your eye, it's sort of those elements that are then going to guide the player if they're moving through an environment. So maybe take these orange trees right here. And I mentioned before, kind of taking these blue flowers and putting them around in some other places. Maybe bring some of these little red trees or these orange trees kind of up in here, and now the perspective is also changed. So, and again, like this is going to be getting a lot of light right here. This is in shadow, so with this one, it's desaturated and cooler. This one is warmer and obviously darker. But, and this is a little bit too light for that atmosphere. But let's see, let's go ahead. Maybe a little bit more warmth there. But push that a little bit. But just sort of moving these around through your scene, kind of where areas of interest are going to be, I think is just kind of a good way to show your thinking about a little bit about level design. I'm actually going to have some.
Guys, real quick, I'm not to interrupt Cameron, but
Yeah.
Marshall, don't text the group chat, the group text, because Cameron's phone is getting picked up. Thank you.
I was just really popular right now.
Well, you are that too.
But another thing that I'm just starting to kind of realize or starting to touch on is that there are a lot of like solid areas in here, and just to sort of pick out a few of these areas in here actually goes like a long way towards kind of improving this depth and perspective and believability. And again, this is like really a principle of working as simply as possible. But, and again, anytime I see a photo right now, I'm not just painting it out. You want to resolve everything at this level before you start putting photos in, and also really kind of contrast in some of these areas. But picking out some of these negative and positive spaces just kind of helps with giving it that tertiary level of design detail. Get some of this in here. And already, I think there's something, this white is, for simplicity's sake, you're not supposed to use white a lot in things, but that's going to be water, so it's a little bit too bright here. I'm just going to get a color. We're just going to be kind of generic blue. I'm just going to get a color. I'm going to get a color and just going to put some of that back there. And let's do it. I'm going to go ahead and separate that a little bit from some of the water. So, okay, there we go. Flip it again. And let's see. Oh, another cool thing that I'm just going to do really quick. This is kind of a little cheat for you. So if there are any purists in the room, avert your eyes. But if you don't know about this, this is a nifty little technique. Also, I'm getting some nice yellow rim glow, so I'm just going to do a little bit of rim light on some of these trees here. This is not the trick. This is but now,
Cameron, do you mind if we get a few more questions in?
yeah, go ahead.
We're coming up to a 2-hour mark, so I want to make sure for these people.
Yeah,
That's okay.
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, Abby, do you have questions from YouTube?
At the moment, we don't have any questions from YouTube, but we did have another one in the Zoom chat from Morgan.
Okay.
And Morgan asks about how do you know you're skilled enough to start being a freelancer and be financially stable?
Okay, that's an excellent question, and there's a very short answer to that, and it's that you just kind of have to do it and hope for the best. You have to, actually, no, there's a little bit more depth to it. Go on to, this is what I've heard. This is I think a pretty fair assessment. Go on to a studio that you like go find Bungie or CD Projekt Red or whatever. Find their staff on ArtStation, go through some of their artists, and pick one that's like a local studio. Don't pick Bungie or CD Projekt Red. Like, good lord. Pick like a local studio, someone that's not like super duper AAA, and find someone there that's doing work where you're like, hey, that's pretty good, but also be willing to kind of look at their least artists, like their most basic introductory artists, and just look at those guys. Find kind of the guys that you think, okay, they're obviously good, but they're not, John Ajurabad. Like, they're not someone that just makes me never want to draw again. They're the kind of person that I can think I could probably do that if, I just really hustled over the next few months or next year or whatever. Find an artist like that, compare your work to them, compare your portfolio with their portfolio, and do that with like a bunch of different artists. And once you get to a point where you think like, all right, I'm able to start hitting that mark, that quality mark, just start sending your resume around. And if you get some responses, then the proof is in the pudding. People are looking at the work, thinking, "Hey, this is pretty good. We'd be interested in talking to you." And if you don't get any responses, don't get discouraged. Just understand that they might, you might still have some distance to go, but also you may very well be absolutely good enough. Ask people in your life, ask artists, hey, where do you think I'm at? Do you think I'm on track? Do you think I'm at a point where I can market myself? Because there's a thing, in case you haven't ever heard of it, called imposter syndrome that every artist struggles with. There are people that have been working for decades that just think like, I can't do this. I'm not good at this anymore, or whatever. And that impacts students too. If you can find a good gig to get your foot in the door, and someone wants to pay you to do designs, even if you have to take less money than you ideally want, don't let anyone walk all over you. But if you look at your work and just be very fair, be very critical of yourself, but be fair. Be fair both in your favor and your detriment. Be fair from the employer standpoint and from your standpoint. I'm not where I want to be. I have a lot of things that I want to pick up, but I've come a long way, and think I'm I think I'm doing okay now. Like I'm pleased with these pieces that I have in my portfolio. I'm pleased with what I'm able to do in an evening or an afternoon. And I'm going to put myself out there and I'm going to try and find work. I'm going to work really hard. And if I get a gig, great. If I end up getting laid off, maybe they didn't like it. Maybe I asked for too much money. Maybe they just didn't need me for that duration of time. But you just kind of have to hope for the best and give yourself a fair critical analysis and work hard, because you're never in your whole life. There's a story I heard of a European portrait painter. I don't remember his name, but the dean of my school told me this story. And they interviewed one of the premier portrait painters in the world. And this kind of goes back to that humility thing. And they said, wow, you've been ranked by the Academy, like whatever. There is a portrait painters union or guild or whatever. You've been ranked as one of the best painters alive at portraits. And he said, no, that's not true. And they said, no, what would it take for you to, agree? And he said, maybe if I had another, maybe 200 of learning, I could get it to be one of the best alive. Maybe 200. And they laughed at it, but I'm sure that's how he felt. And it's because the better you get, the more you surround yourself with people who are, you keep leveling up. And so the competition gets higher. And so you're always permanently going to be feeling like you're less than you probably are. You're always going to be more critical of yourself. You're your own worst enemy. So as long as you are critical and as long as you are fair and you try and keep a very realistic assessment of yourself, just go out there and do your best. Like, go out, be the best, do your best, work hard, play hard. And for me, I'm kind of lucky because to me, the freelancing is just, nothing changed for me through COVID. Like, just waking up and painting all day, and that was what I was always doing. I wasn't going out a lot. I'm sort of a homebody, and so I knew a lot of people that were saying like, oh, this is terrible. I'm going insane. Nothing really changed for me personally. I'm not saying you have to be like that, but if you are, maybe freelance is a really good option. As far as studios go, you're really going to struggle to get into a studio, just because that's how it is. I recommend trying to freelance before going into a studio, because studios, unless they're contracting, which is kind of the thing with freelance, unless they're contracting, in my experience, they want you to be super niche. They want you to do one thing. So if I was going to be an environment artist, I would need to do environment until my eyes fell out of my head. I would just need to paint environment all day. If I did characters and I did poster art and stuff like that as well, it's my experience that some art directors look at that and it's almost a detriment. Like, they think that you're trying to do too much, or maybe they just think that you're not a specialist in that field. So if you want to be a freelancer, if that's something you want to do, I found that versatility is good for that. If you want to be a studio artist, and say you look at Destiny, or you look at Halo, and you think, that's awesome, that's the kind of concept art I want to make, I want to paint environments for a living, then just as someone who's done both, I would tell you, market yourself as that, go all in on that, and just kind of play to that strength if you want to work in a studio. Because if you do a lot of things, it's just harder to kind of get people to think you're a specialist at the thing that they want you to do. But sorry, that was a very long tangent. But yeah, continue. I'm sorry.
You're good. And more, I guess, maybe something that I'm wondering, could you, while we have a little bit of time, something that might also speak to Morgan's question is the kind of, you mentioned stepping into the perspective, or what's important to, say, the person you're going to for feedback and for direction. Would that also, like, when it comes to like just having the mentality of being a problem solver, as far as, when studios are looking for artists, for instance, they're looking for someone to solve a problem.
Yeah.
And, or provide a solution or do a service that they can't either do themselves or they don't have time for.
Yeah. So are you basically just saying kind of the way you talk to employers, be sort of always trying to solve problems before they even come up? Or, I'm sorry, can you rephrase the question?
I guess what is your perspective as far as when you're trying to create a body of work and a portfolio that shows that you can be a problem solver in a niche or a specific area or expertise?
Sure. So to talk kind of about level design, dang, I wish I had this guy's name off the top of my head. There's a guy who did some work. I can forward him. I'll just try and describe it. It's so with a scene like this, if you really want to sell someone on your problem solving skills and you just want to knock it out of the park, there's this scene, and this scene, like, let's say the camera is like right here. And if you use 3D at all, then like this is what a camera looks like. And it's just taking that view. So that's cool, but a 3D artist is going to need to actually build this environment. So then, if even an orthographic, if you can, whoops, it's a little off the page. Even an orthographic, if you can kind of paint just a cross section, just like a cutout of this scene, like this. So let's say here's some of these little things. Here's the waterfall. This is really bad. But here's the waterfall. And then here's like this path, and you go ahead and include this. But you can kind of just paint some rocks here, do kind of a cross section, and pretty much move the camera into another view, or even within the context of this view, if you can just rotate or pivot the camera to be, you know, over here. Let's say you want your camera over here and it's pointing in this direction. You know, that kind of, and then say, what would that look like from that angle? That sort of thing, that sort of problem solving, just saying, like for instance, when I did with that poster, I had a banner crop and a vertical crop for it. Well, with an environment design like this looks really cool from this angle maybe, but once you move the camera, what's it going to look like? Because the player is going to go over and they're going to stand right here. They're going to stand on this, waterfall and look down. What's that going to look like? Is that going to look just as cool as this? And is it going to be consistent throughout these shots so that someone in the 3D department can actually go ahead and start to build this environment? And if you can be thinking of that ahead and really iron out the wrinkles and really kind of put forward like, hey, this is my plan for this environment. Instead of this is just my plan for this painting as a singular design. If you can actually move your camera around, and this is the thing Craig Mullins talks about, like do a film study where you paint from a film still, and then do another study where you move the camera somewhere else in that scene and try and paint that from imagination. And you're essentially doing that whenever you design a level from different angles, is you're just trying to kind of solve problems from all angles. And if you can do that without being asked, or just put that in your portfolio and people see that, then they'll just know that you can do that, and that's a big part of the process. So it's a win-win.
That's a great answer. It's great advice.
Also, using 3D, I might say, like, don't use 3D too much as a crutch. 3D is just so big now, and it's so powerful, and it's so useful, and I don't think of it as a crutch really anyway. But if you can use 3D, and if you can figure out, this is really important, if you can figure out, and it's not actually that hard, but if you're not doing it right, you're going to be working against yourself. If you can figure out how to block this scene out, like take this thumbnail, like let's just say this is a color sketch, and you want to add a little bit more detail, but let's say, just kind of, you take this scene, and if you can bring this into Blender or Max or whatever program, and build a rough block-in of this scene with your sun pointing from the right direction. Let's just say your sun is going to be up here, and it's going to kind of come through here, or maybe you want your sun back here, and it's going to come through these trees. But if you can just set that up quickly, and I'm talking like within 20 or 30 minutes, maybe an hour, if you can learn how to do that, and then you can use your really rough, basic 3D geo, which when I say basic, I mean what this tree right here is going to look like, because it's going to be that shape. Like, it's going to look like that. It's not going to have any more detail, and then or you can just do that. And then a light will come down, and it will tell you exactly how light is going to, and then there's going to be some bounce light over here, and it's going to really tell you how to make this look natural. And then you can go ahead and really quickly start. Then you're cooking with gas, because then all the perspective, all that stuff, so much of that is done for you. And that's a big part of just making it fast to do that kind of level design. At that point, you're pretty much working in the same technique the actual environment artist is going to be working in. You're just not taking it nearly as far.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for all that, Cameron. Yeah, I would say definitely getting feedback. I do know an artist that he takes interviews every 3 months. He's worked at the same studio for the past 6 years, but he takes interviews at different studios just so he can get different critiques from different views in the industry of his work, so he doesn't get pigeonholed into just one style. But I think everything you've said today really speaks to a lot of artists out there. Guys, Cameron, I know you can keep on going, but I know some of you guys need to get going. So all I'm going to say is if you want to carry this discussion, you guys can go to our Facebook, you can go to our Instagram, you can hit the like and the subscribe on the YouTube, so we know we're bringing you content that y'all want to see. If there's artists out there or subjects y'all want to hear about, let us know. I know there's been some chatter about doing some substance designer classes or things like that. Just to give you a little more feedback as to what to expect over the next coming months. So we're getting to the holiday season, so we're not going to have any full-fledged meetings like today until January, but that January meeting is going to be a virtual production meeting. We're bringing in a speaker who's worked on huge LED screens like the Mandalorian type of workflow, and answering how they're creating sets, virtual sets for final production work. Another thing we're working on right now is we're coming up with online sales for our t-shirts, and maybe even bringing up online sales for some of our past t-shirts, like this one that we did a few years ago. That should be coming up in the next few months. Cameron, can you just restate for me where people can find you? What's either the best way to look at your portfolio or just to ask you a few questions?
Yeah, sure. Probably the easiest way to contact me is by Facebook. If you just Google Cameron Witt, literally the first result is my ArtStation page. It's just the very top, Cameron Witt, on ArtStation. Or just send me a friend request on Facebook. I'm not on LinkedIn as much as I should be, but more or less Facebook and ArtStation. Also, if you want to follow me on Instagram, because I'm 20-something years old and I have to plug my Instagram or whatever, it's just camwitt.art on Instagram, and there's like a lot of different kinds of things. I'll be honest, I kind of in some way pride myself in just being versatile. It's something I was trained to be, and I found out it's a very double-edged sword, but since I got it, I kind of flaunt it, and I like doing that. So there's a lot of different kinds of stuff there. But yeah, if y'all want to send me a friend request or send me a message, ask for a hangover, anything like that, I'm always very happy to help. So don't hesitate to reach out.
I think I really appreciate all the time you've done, and I know there's a lot of prep time that goes into making this happen. And thank you for being very approachable through the few months that we've been planning this talks, and I'm glad we finally got to do it. I think we're going to send you, Omar. I think we're going to send you this final Photoshop file so you can look at it, because I know there's just a ton of work that's gone into this. Yeah. And I'm sure you guys can chat, a little bit more, later about this. But Cameron, again, I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for everyone for joining us. Tatiana, thank you for coming on. Scott, thank you for coming on. Abby, thank you for asking some amazing questions. Marshall, you do a great tech job and making sure we're on point.
Mm-hmm. Well, there was one tech error, so. Hey,
it was my fault. It was my fault.
No, that was my fault. There was double audio in the YouTube. Hey, we put the Discord link to our Short Guy server on there too, and we might hang out there over the holidays.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I want to mention out that we're gonna try to do a couple little drink and draws or just hang out and chat. And maybe, if you're working on something, we can all just, learn from each other, kind of like the little luncheons that we used to do. But I think this will be a lot easier, especially over the coming months. And hopefully it's actually something we carry on throughout the year as a addition to all the content that we do on this channel. So with that, guys, I think I'm just going to say good night, good day. Have a great Saturday. Keep making great art. I want to hear from every one of you. So see you guys.
We'll see you YouTube.
Oh.
Zoom can stay on the line.
Yeah, Zoom.
I was gonna say, Danny,